Tonight on the World of Speedway, we review the World Series Sprint Car Championship, brilliantly won by James McFadden. We examine race formats, time trials and pole shootouts. What do the sport's paying spectators want to see when they go to the races? We're joined by expert commentator Justin Mineeff and Sydney sprint car driver Warren Ferguson. And we preview the major races being staged across the country in the month of March.
On Speed, you're watching World of Speedway, proudly brought to you by Murphy's Group Services, leader in industrial roof replacements and asbestos removal. Frank's Auto Parts, the leader in auto parts recycling for over 50 years. East Coast Traffic Control, Australia's largest privately owned traffic control company, and Valvoline Engine Armour, it's armour for your engine.
Well, in the aftermath to James McFadden's second consecutive victory in World Series Sprint Cars, we welcome you to this week's episode of the World of Speedway, and certainly with McFadden's victory last weekend at the Perth Motorplex in wrapping up the 2012-2013 World Series Championship, he certainly underlined his status as the sport's leading driver in Australia in the present era. We'll talk about all of that today and a whole lot more. Good to have your company on the Speed Channel around Australia. Joining me in the studio tonight, Justin Mineeff. Good to see you back, mate.
Thanks, Tappy. Great to be here.
Plenty of things to talk about, and for the first time on World of Speedway, Warren Ferguson, top Sydney sprint car driver. Good to see you.
Thank you, David. Good to see you, and thanks for the invite to be on the show.
All right, I've already alluded to James McFadden. Outstanding performance, JJ. What a season! World Series Sprint Cars crowned for the second time, the Australian Championship for the second time, and of course also defeating the world's best driver, Donny Schatz, to win the Australian Open. You can't do much more.
Another great season from James McFadden. I think last season a lot of people would have looked at, it was a career year for him, the way he came out of the blocks on World Series, and he's backed it up, and that's when the pressure is on. I mean, as defending champion, people are looking at you. Fantastic performance. I think that team, we talk about it a lot, chemistry. I don't really know a better way to define it, but in terms of that entire team, they're doing a sensational job, and he is really the benchmark in Australian sprint car racing at the moment.
Yeah, I think team is obviously the key word, and as you know, Warren, as a current competitor, you've got to have the package in its entirety. In the case of McFadden, a dedicated and well-resourced team owner in Scott Milling,
yes,
a hugely talented crew chief in Glenn Beaton, so
yes,
it's gelling perfectly.
It is. I mean, it takes a full package to make this sport work, like any sort of motorsport. You have a good mechanic, a good driver, you have a well-funded team, and I think underlying all that, the whole team gels together with a desire to win, and that takes you a long way.
All right, at this juncture, we'll check out the top 10 points at the completion of World Series. McFadden on 3,640. In advance of the American Shane Stewart, Stephen Lyons, good job in third spot. Luke Dillon, very commendable fourth place finish. Kading, Pesca, Robbie Farr, who didn't contest all rounds, Bradford Hurst, and Nick Lacey. Now, Shane Stewart, Justin, I recall you coming on the program prior to World Series, blasting off for this summer. You tipped him as the most likely champion. I agreed with you. His credentials are superb, but it just didn't quite happen for him. No,
I should have taken an each way bet on that one. But look, they started the season in a tough way. I think they got themselves in a bit of a hole. For whatever reason, they weren't running where they wanted to run. The team were committed. They stayed with it. They changed chassis. They just kept working on it. And his class came through towards the end of the season, and he really got on a run, and he got to that second spot. But again, as Warren outlined, it takes an entire team. And so they've got a great team. They got themselves in a hole. They dug themselves out of it. But James McFadden's team was just a little bit better over the course of the year. And again, that just shows you how good a driver this guy is. Shane Stewart is right up there in the US. McFadden was able to beat him over the course of a season.
Yeah, I guess certainly the uninitiated Warren would expect that Shane Stewart would be disappointed in the fact that he came second. But the facts are Australia is now very much on equal terms with America in sprint car racing.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we can buy the latest and greatest gear just like these guys can, and a lot of us are going over there and sourcing the equipment that they've run last year. And that equipment now can run for 2, 3, 4 years and still be very, very competitive. So yeah, I'd say Shane's definitely disappointed with that result. But I don't think it should take anything away from how some of the Aussie drivers like James and Stephen Lyons and so forth have competed. Those guys have done very well through the course of the season.
Well, Stephen Lyons super consistent again, as is evidenced by his third place finish in the championship. He's also won the Grand Annual Classic this season, so he's had a stellar summer, and it certainly reiterates his status as being among the top three, you'd have to say, in the country right now.
Yeah, I think Stephen's been coming for a couple of years. I remember going to the East Trail a couple of years ago and watching the guy drive, and he was amazing. What he did up against the wall on some of those smaller tracks where a lot of the other guys wouldn't venture was actually quite incredible. I got a lot of respect for that guy.
Okay. Luke Dillon, another name we spoke about in our World Series preview on the show a few months ago, and I did say at the time that he would be quite competitive. He, of course, has done it before, many years ago, albeit, but did a great job and got off to a perfect start, winning the first couple.
I thought he'd be fast at home. I mean, he's very strong around Adelaide and Murray Bridge, but when he went out on the road, he just continued that pace. He was a little bit unlucky as well. I mean, he could have got some better results, but I think his performance over the course of the season was exceptional. It's tough competition out there, and World Series is such a grueling series. To go out on the road and to perform like that over the course of the entire series, great job, and he'll be a lot better for it. I mean, those guys that have got to race him now at Adelaide every week, they're going to have to race him hard.
Yeah, well said. Warren, Tim Kading, the American, stepping into a massive pair of shoes, replacing Brooke Tatnell in the Cricket Motorsport team. You were banging wheels with him when you drove in the World Series rounds at Parramatta or Sydney Speedway. Perhaps he didn't quite gel with the Cricket team.
No, it didn't seem to have the same fit as what Brooke had with the team. I think the cars were probably a little bit different to what Tim's used to racing. And, you know, Tim's a full-on aggressive driver who likes that big momentum track and gets up and gets going. And the Australian tracks aren't quite like that. So I think maybe the whole unit just didn't come together very well.